Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Reich, and this is Crime Talk. Thanks for joining us on our Tuesday night live program here every Tuesday night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. We are coming to you live on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Twitch. I think that's it. Anyway, because you got to have backups in life because you never know what, some of these platforms will do to you. They like to knock you off if you say the wrong thing or what have you. So you got to be prepared, right? Anyway, thanks for joining us. Appreciate everyone for being here. We're making up for a show that we missed last week. And I told you last week I was going to be out, and I was. We can talk a little bit about that. Didn't get the result that we were hoping for, but sometimes when you have tough facts, it comes up with tough verdicts. Sometimes you got to just go try those cases that you think, why are we here today? But you got to do what you got to do. But anyway, we can talk about that briefly. Can't get into all the specifics for obvious reasons, attorney-client, all that kind of good stuff. But I can just tell you, we lost. Crashed and burned. Wasn't pretty. But sometimes that's what happens. You can't win them all. Although I do hate losing. I can tell you that. I hate losing more than I actually like winning. But what can you do? A lot going on. The Alex Murdoch trial continues. I think we're up to day 21. The prosecution rested last week. The defense called, I think, one witness last Friday. They called old Buster Murdoch today. Buster Murdoch. Boy, has that guy got some red hair. Now, my mother was a redhead, so I'm not going to, make fun of redheads. But I think, as they used to say in the military, he's a tracer round, because tracer rounds have red on top. So he's got some red hair. Now, the question is, was he believable on the witness stand? He came across as pretty prepped. He did pretty well. Was what he had to offer of that great importance? Yeah, probably not. But the purpose was to humanize Alex Murdoch, and then to get in some of the information that you would not otherwise be able to get in. For example, where did you park when you go to Almeida, which was the house for the grandparents? Oh, well, you pull around and you can park out back, and then you have to call. Because remember, they're kind of making a big deal, like, that's weird. Why is he calling? So you have to put somebody up to say, that's completely reasonable. This is why we did what we did. And if you can have a witness come and testify for something that you normally may need your own client to do, that's the best way to do it. Have somebody else testify so that your client does not need to testify. And then the defense today called an expert witness. And the expert was there to do, what's the word I'm looking for? Basically say or support the defense two-shooter theory. And if you look at the math, which is simple, you look at the angles, you look at this, the only way we can determine that the killers that did this, based upon the trajectory of the rounds found in various buildings that were out there, obviously the real shooter was 5'2" to 5'4". Alex Murdoch is 6'4", so it's impossible for him to have done that. Now, the expert that they called was Mike Sutton, and the defense tried to say, oh, you're not even a gun guy. You're not even qualified to talk about this. Well, no, he's a mechanical engineer, and this is what engineers do. My firm has hired engineers just like Mr. Sutton. We've never used his firm, but basically it's a bunch of engineers, and they try to figure out why things break. And if they break, can they fix it? And that's really what this guy does. He gets hired by lots of people in lots of various different circumstances, and they try to figure out what happened. He says he's done cases for insurance companies. Was this situation plausible? Was this something, was it a suicide? Was it a homicide? those types of things that you got to sometimes ask the engineers to do it. And you have to look at the math. And, for the state to say, oh, you're not a crime scene reconstructionist, you don't listen, ladies and gentlemen, most crime scene reconstruction people, it's not like you go to college and say, hey, I want to get a crime scene reconstruction degree. You don't get that. Most of the time, it's police officers who had an interest in it, and they're like, oh, you can take your little string and pull it across and say, oh, this is where the trajectory went, so we can determine from here, this is where the shooter was. That's really it. We had an expert witness, last week in our trial. He came in and did the same thing. Here's the door. Here's the way the bullet went in. Can you trace how it went through the door, etc.? He was not a big mathematician. Frankly, excuse me. He had some much better theories for us than he did for the prosecution, but unfortunately, it wasn't supported really by the evidence. So anyway, the Mr. Sutton, the guy for the defense, overall, he came in, and this is the problem when you start arguing with experts. The prosecutor, in my opinion, it was trying to say, well, into consideration the fact that during in June there's lots of trees, and during this time it wasn't the same. There are lots of other things that affect it. And what they were really talking about was that he did some sound reconstruction engineering where they fired similar guns as to what they believe was fired the night on June 7th, 2021, when Paul and Maggie were killed. And basically to see if somebody were there, would they hear it if they were up at the house? The defense theory being, hey, even if you believe that the audio that has Alec Murdoch down there, I think at 8:42, and their phones go kind of silent for the lack of movement at around, what we say, I think it was like right around 8:48, 9 o'clock, something along right around there. And if you believe that his car doesn't leave until 9:05, clearly what they're trying to do is say, even if you believe that, and he could have been down there, but he could have walked back up, changed clothes, and he would not have heard the gunfire going on down there by the kennels. And obviously he drove away because he had no idea what was going on. That's basically his theory. And then they talked about whether the car slowed down or didn't slow down, where Maggie's phone was located, and they went round and round. The prosecutor, though, it's like, dude, you're dealing with a guy that has a degree in mechanical engineering. You're not going to win on the math, so to speak. He's going to be able to outmaneuver you on that. But the prosecution tried to say, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, which is what you do when you have an expert that you want to try and make some points on. But let's face it, the old adage that when you wrestle with a pig, the only thing that's going to happen is you're going to get muddy. You're not going to beat an expert unless the prosecutor has, master's degree in mechanical engineering and it's all physics based like this guy was talking about. The expert's probably going to win at the end of the day. We'll have to wait and see whether it was effective for the defense or not. We're getting close. Eventually, we're going to have jury instructions. Eventually, we're going to have closing arguments, but we've got to get through everybody. Now, what is also important, I think the doctor that the defense called last week, he said he determined time of death right around 9 p.m., which would be a little bit later than what the state is theorizing. And, is it enough to raise reasonable doubt? They being the government, has charged Alec Murdoch with obviously the death of both Maggie and Paul. They're not saying he conspired with somebody. They're not saying somebody else did it and that he was a compliciter. They are betting the ranch on the fact that they believe he's the one that pulled the trigger. Now, I understand there's been a lot of evidence that makes Alec Murdoch look bad. He was stealing money. He was using drugs, lying to just about everybody. No doubt about that. But what evidence do they have that actually puts him behind the trigger? They have some photos, obviously have the audio. The timing could be off just a little bit. I'm expecting the defense to bring in their own cell phone expert guy or woman who is going to talk about, the bad reception, how it affects, when it says something was sent or received. So I don't know. It's going to be very interesting. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is old Buster Murdoch testified today. And, remember when he got confronted a couple of months ago, it was before the trial. He was leaving the residence of his girlfriend there in Hilton Head, where he currently lives. And somebody asked, are you supporting your father? And he got very defensive and said, don't you write that I'm supporting my father in any way. Okay, I thought, well, maybe he had turned on old dad. Clearly not. And so I was a little surprised, since he got in a little bit of trouble early on when he was, maybe doing the old finger thing when people were up on the stand. Why the prosecution went so soft on him. Really a little surprised by that. This is a guy that's been kicked out of law school for being less than truthful when it came to plagiarism. They didn't go after him on that. They basically got up there and said, "Hey, I'm sorry for your loss. You've lost your grandparents. You've lost your mother, your brother. So sorry." And really didn't ask him much questions. Treated him with kid gloves. I was a little surprised. Let's see. I got a super chat here. Let me see if I can put it up. SG, prosecutor was way too argumentative on cross. Had my first in-person oral argument Friday. Congratulations. Tentative was in my favor. Tested positive for COVID on Sunday. Sorry about that. That's unfortunate indeed. Well, good luck on your oral arguments. But yes, let's see. Let's see here. Let me see if I can take these down. I got people popping up. All right. So, okay, so it wasn't just me. I thought the prosecutor was a little too argumentative, trying to prove a point that just wait it out. Just bring in your own expert. I don't know. I don't know. If you think, well, maybe Alec Murdoch maybe did it, probably did it. I feel strongly that he did it. Does that rise to the level of reasonable doubt? Not a vague, imaginary, or speculative doubt, but a doubt that would cause people to pause in matters of great importance to themselves. I don't know. I wish I had, but even then, when you get to see a jury, you don't know exactly what a jury is thinking. I've had juries over the years where they're sitting there smiling at you. Yes, and they're very attentive, taking notes. You're like, this is great. I've got these jurors. They loving me. They're buying what I am selling. This is great. And then they come back guilty. I have others that literally will not look at you in the face, and you think, oh, we've lost that juror, and they come back not guilty. So the moral of that little story is you just never know what a jury will do. Remember, it has to be unanimous, all 12 jurors. Now, they better hurry it up because we're running out of jurors. We have 2 alternates remaining, is my understanding. We got rid of 2 last week that got sick. Somebody else went to the hospital today. I hope it's not all COVID related or or what have you. But we'll just have to wait and see. Yeah, would love to know what's going on with thousands of pills. Well, I mean, when they said that Alec Murdoch had an opioid problem, first thought is like, wow, that's quite a problem. But then to come to find out, I think he was spending $50,000 a week on pills. I mean, that's like $200,000 a month. That just seems really high. He must be getting like designer Gucci things. I don't know. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Let's see here. Yeah, let me just look at some of the comments here. Yeah, I mean, who knows? I mean, when Buster showed up for court the last 3 weeks and has been sitting there dutifully following for his dad's case every day, I guess good for him, I guess. And here's the thing that I don't get, and maybe I need to I should have looked this up, and I thought it was odd early on, but wherever I've come from, there's always been a sequestration order. And a sequestration order is so that witnesses in the case are not in the courtroom. They don't get to see how other people testify, so that they are prevented from forming or conforming their testimony to what they thought they heard somebody else say. And on cross-examination today of Buster Murdoch, that was brought up as to, well, when did you first start thinking about this particular issue? I think it was, driving around the side of the house at his grandmother's house. And it was basically, well, a couple days ago. Okay. That's one of the things that that's why you have sequestration orders. I've never seen a trial, particularly a homicide trial, where there has been no sequestration order. And I don't think I've seen anything that said, well, we'll exempt it for whomever. It looks like everybody who's testified gets to sit in there. Usually you get to sit in the courtroom after you're done testifying and you've been released from your subpoena, which means you're not subject to recall anymore. You're done. They can't call you back up. And so, yeah. All right. Somebody's saying here in South Carolina, there's an exception for anyone who's a victim. And okay, and I get that. His mother and brother were killed. I understand that. But I think I've seen other people that have been in the courtroom testifying as well. I think some of the attorneys and everybody were there. It was very, very unusual to me. But maybe it is just for victims. I don't know. I get it. As a victim, frankly, if I was the prosecution, I'd be jumping up and down saying, oh no, he's a victim. We're not going to have him here. He can testify when he's released. Then he'll be released in that particular way. Sue wants to ask Scott, where to go? Man, the comments are going by so fast, which is a good thing. Scott, can anything happen to Mr. Griffin for his tweet? So it came up first thing this morning. The judge was like, hey there, Mr. Griffin. I was looking on my Twitter feed, of which you are not a friend or on my Twitter feed, but I noticed that you liked an article that was in the Washington Post that Washington Post criticized the investigation done by the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, also known as SLED. And old Harptulian was sitting there kind of smiling, got a little smirk on his face. And Mr. Griffin says, well, Judge, I'm not really sure what you mean. I just retweeted it. I didn't comment on it. And the judge is like, well, is this somehow part of your defense strategy? He's like, well, no, Judge. I just, I liked it. I liked the thing because it was criticizing and kind of agreeing what I do. So I put it out there. And the judge said, hey, remember that basketball player that liked somebody and liked a like or something, and he got suspended because he came across as being, I think it was anti-Semitic or something to that effect. So he said, hey, just be careful. And basically, you could lose money. I think it was I wouldn't say veiled threat, but I think it was something that basically was something to the effect of, better. I've got a gag order out there. Why would this, be going on? Don't do it. Stop it. Let's see here. Let me just double check something here before let's see. There was something else I wanted to check here. Yeah, that's what I thought. Tinsley, the other lawyer, and the gun guys from today were all in the courtroom today. Yeah, that's just the way I've noticed it. So yeah, it's yeah, it's interesting. In Idaho, winter storm, not as bad as I thought. Oh, let's see. Our favorite Kay Woodcock. Mom Pink, in Idaho storm, not as bad as I thought it would be. We're warm and well, waiting on Chad's hearing Thursday. Another severance request. Obviously, Kay and Larry Woodcock, grandparents for JJ. She called in to our, both Larry and Kay called into our Patreon show a couple weeks ago. Obviously, they're the ones that helped really get things going there to get that case being prosecuted. And they've been at every court appearance since, and they would like to get it, televised, not just for the world to see what's taking place, but also for the fact that they have lots of family members that can't make it to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell's trial, which is supposed to go, I think, for 10 weeks. Obviously going to be a little tough for that. And I don't know. I think as you can see with the Alec Murdoch case, if you have a very strong judge, you're not going to have any problems. I love the judge in the Alec Murdoch case. I think he's been absolutely nailing it and hold everybody's feet to the fire. When the defense opened the doors, he's not afraid to reverse himself. A lot of time judges just don't have the guts to say, I got it wrong. I guess they really didn't get it wrong, but they said, hey, I gave you a ruling, and then you screwed it up by opening the door, as Mr. Murdoch's attorneys have done now on 2 occasions. They were able to bring in all the financial stuff because they brought in character evidence. And once you basically say, hey, my guy's a good guy, you get to be able to bring in evidence as it relates to, well, is he really a good guy? Is he really a good guy? Not so much. I mean, the defense is going to say, hey, you may not want to give this guy the most trustworthy guy of the year award, but he didn't kill his wife and kid. So we'll have to wait and see. Taylor's got a thing here. It says, because we were talking about Alec Murdoch's alleged $50,000 a week pill problem. Impossible to ingest that many drugs. Obviously, allegedly, Alex and who else may have been running a pill mill, money laundering, etc. Who else was involved? Good question. That just seems crazy. I know people can take lots of pills if they get addicted to them, but that seems like a lot. I know they can be expensive, but yeah, that just seems like a lot. Yes, SG. They did make a slight effort to impeach old Buster by mentioning he heard some woman's testimony. Yes, the housekeeper, as it related to, what's the word I'm looking for? The housekeeper who said she hadn't seen those clothes again, and he had changed. Now, if you've ever lived in the South, Okay, correct me if I'm wrong. But it seemed like when I lived in the South, down there in lovely Beaufort, South Carolina, specifically Ladies Island area years and years ago, and in the summertime, it got hot. And it felt like you were constantly in the shower trying to, you would just get hot and muggy and wet. And you would just, they're like, oh, he takes showers. He's a prolific shower, takes lots of showers. I mean, I know people in the South that do that. It just depends on civil law. How you doing this evening? I know you've been covering the Murdoch trial as well. Let me know what your thoughts are. I've been a little busy. I literally, for the last 2 years, everything just kept getting pushed off. And now even the prosecutor's like, yeah, all these cases that we've been waiting and pushing off, home to roost. But my cases, even my one last year, I mean, it was literally over a year. It was only a year old because I'm a kind of let's go get it done kind of guy. Let's go. The facts are what they are. Let's go do it. We're not going to sit around and, just wait forever. Like eventually you got to just go try the case. So, the lovely Miss Kristen. I love when she sends me texts. Apparently, because I just described it, hot and sweaty and humidity. But doesn't the humidity give you a certain glow about your face? Doesn't it? I mean, seriously. She's like, and why do you want to live in the South? Because it is lovely. It is lovely. The people are so nice, Gotta admit, we've seen a little bit of Southern hospitality down there. Everybody's so nice. We'll have to wait and see. Let's see here. Did Scott comment on the tweets? Yes. Bad. Shouldn't have done it. In my opinion, looking for trouble. Why do it? Mr. Griffin, stop. Don't do it. Scott, what do you think the voters need to do in order to remove the bad judges and the state's attorneys? I think Wayne is referring to Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. Judges, this is one of those things, man. I've said it before, not anything I haven't, it's not like I made it up, but I think it was Hamilton. Somebody said, you get the government you deserve, right? And if people don't care, nobody cares about who the judges are until, they show up and they don't do a great job. And then everybody hates them. How do we get rid of them? Well, unless they've committed some egregious violation of the law, then they need to be impeached, but they probably have not. So only thing you can do is vote them out, depending on what the retention is. Where I am, our state, if they say, hey, each county or each state has various judicial districts. And let's say, just for ease of sake, Denver, the city and county of Denver has, a vacancy that comes up. They have a nominating committee. They say, submit your nominations by this particular date, and this committee will then screen them. And if there's one judgeship available at the time, then they send up 3 nominations to the governor to appoint one of them to be a judge. They serve a 2-year term. After that 2 years, they stand for retention, and then every 6 years after that. So that's what you have to do. People always call me and say, hey, what do you think about this judge when it's election time? And they say the blue book. And then we have a system here where they rate it. They rate the judges and like, hey, this is a good judge. And don't get me wrong, there are some very good judges out there. Most of them are pretty competent. Some of them, not so much. And, we've had a couple of them booted out of office here from the bench. I think last cycle, there was at least one that I can think of. Maybe it was the time before last. But that particular judge was terrible, imposing illegal sentences because she didn't know the law. The prosecution hated her. The defense hated her. I just don't get it, how anybody could be that terrible. Thank goodness that particular judge was removed from the bench. Every now and then, somebody sneaks through and they just screw it up. But can you get rid of them just about any other way? No, not really. Not really, unless they break the law. Just because you don't like their ruling isn't a basis in which to do that. So my advice is pay attention. So when you get to elect judges, don't vote for them because they have a particular letter after their name. No, you want to look at them and say, how do the attorneys rate them? That's really, I think, what it comes down to. Our system has attorneys get to rate them, people that appear in front of them, members of the community get surveys and say, hey, was this judge good? Were they fair? I want a judge, in my humble opinion, obviously that is smart, is going to follow the law and make tough decisions that maybe are not always the popular one. And I remember we've talked about this before, but there's a quote from Justice Scalia. And I saw him speak, and he basically said, if you as a judge always get the result that you want, you're not a good judge because you're not necessarily following the law. He was talking about the Texas case. I think it's McKeon, the one where about flag burning and whether it's protected or not. And he goes, do you know who? It was a plurality decision, 5-4, United States Supreme Court. He goes, do you know who was the deciding fifth vote on that particular case? Justice Scalia said, it was me. Do I find it absolutely abhorrent? Do I want people burning the flag? No. But he said, as the founding fathers wrote at the time that it was written, which is what you have to do when you do statutory interpretation, the words, you give plain meaning and effect to the words that they were written at the time. You don't say, well, that was written way back when, and now this is it. Well, guess what? There's a remedy for that. It's called you change it. So anyway, there's a way to amend the Constitution. It's really, it's supposed to be difficult. It's supposed to be hard because it wasn't meant to be modified at every whim of every voting cycle for every little thing that comes up for it. It's supposed to be difficult. Remember, the founding fathers wanted limited government. They didn't trust the government. Remember that. They were doing something radical. Up until that time, the world had always been run by kings and dictators and despots. And they said, we're going to try something radical. We're going to let it be run by the people. So anyway, Justice Scalia says he was the deciding vote, saying I'm absolutely abhorrent. I don't want this, but that's what the plain meaning of the language was, and therefore you have to follow the law. And so he said, as a judge, I probably could have come up and twisted a way to do that. And so he, wants to, he could have come up with a way to get to the result that he wanted to. But he says, that's not my job as a judge, to follow the law. So remember, look at who the attorneys say is a good judge. There were judges out there. I mean, we had this one judge. Oh my God. Wasn't afraid to hold both parties' feet to the fire. He had been there, done that, was on the bench for like 40 years. And he got reversed by the Court of Appeals, but he didn't let it bother him. He was a great judge. And he was the one that always said sentencing. He was like, listen, I'm going to give you, defendant, a chance between now and the date that we get sentenced. And we're going to see how you do. And basically, you are going to be your own judge. You're either going to comply, show that you can do pretrial services, have negative UAs, don't pick up any new law violations, and you will be your own judge. Because if you fail at any one of those, I'm going to send you to prison. So the judge could sleep at night saying, you're the one that screwed it up, or you did a great job. So just remember that. Remember, those judgeships matter. And it shouldn't be, what's the word I'm looking for? You want judges. What's the word I'm looking for? You want judges that are fearless, to say, this is the law. This is my facts. I apply the law to the facts and make my rulings. You don't like me? peel me, but I've made my decision. But not afraid to say, you know what? I've looked at it, and you've got me some more authority, and you know what? I'm going to change my mind. Yeah. On civil law, really, judge's ruling on the motive evidence seems substantially overbroad to me. I can't disagree with you on that one. I think that was a little bit. I think I personally think the judge does not like Alec Murdoch. I think he thinks he's just a big old bag of trash. Let's just call it for what it is. You know, he's in that county. He probably grew up all his life hearing about the Murdochs, right? I wonder if he got a job interview at old Parker Murdoch. Somehow I'm not thinking he did. Just going on a hunch there. Just going on a hunch. Anyway, all right, super chat. Love your group watching this trial. Great people. Clever nickname. Appreciate you being here. I know there's other channels you can go and watch, but I we try to bring it to you. Frank's here every morning, bright and early, get that stuff set up, ready to go, and try to keep it on. Every now and then the internet's not Frank's fault. I assure you of that. It's somebody else's fault. So yeah, we don't ask or beg for super chats, but it does help us get them highlighted here when the comments are going by. And yeah, they're going by fast tonight. Old BBE, I think Alex is guilty. He very well may be. Oh, here's another super chat, looks like, right? Why did the prosecution not introduce someone sitting on an ATV gun angle today in court? And thanks so much, Scott. I don't think they have any evidence of that. And that's kind of the problem with the government's case. They don't have an eyewitness. They don't have somebody that's rolled on Alex Murdoch. And they really don't have anything to put him behind the trigger. And I know a lot of people don't like that, but that's it. And who knows? That could be enough to raise reasonable doubt in and of itself. Please pass the sugar. Thanks for that super chat there. Appreciate that. So that's really the problem. I mean, basically they say that somebody would have to be, 5'2" to shoot from that particular angle. 5'2" to 5'10", I think was the range. But Alex is 6'4", so he couldn't do it. Now, I mean, they're saying the angles from the shed X distance away, and if you trace that line straight back, and then of course the prosecution's like, oh well, it could have been ricochet, couldn't it? Yeah, but there's really no evidence of that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, here's what you have to consider. I know Alex Murdoch has spent some $600,000 when he cashed out his retirement account to pay for his defense. The civil attorneys agreed, hey, you got a right to defend yourself. You can use some of that money. And they kept a little bit more from that account, cashing it out so that they could have that go to his theft victims, alleged theft victims, right? I think pretty much he did it on that. But you have to admit, this is some good lawyering. And this shows you what you can do when money's not an issue. Seriously. Public defenders' offices, they have lots of cases. They got a budget. They got to prioritize what they can do. You think they're going to go hire a guy? I think he was charging $350 an hour for his time at about 50 hours, which is frankly reasonable. I mean, you don't do it all sitting down in 1 week. It's over a course of time. But that's reasonable. But most people, I mean, let's just do the math on that real quick. So the guy, let's just say he was getting $300 an hour just to keep it reasonable. And he said he worked about 50 hours. That's 15 grand. Maybe for a case like this, maybe in a case like Koberger's case in Idaho, they'll spend the money on something like that. Yeah, okay. Somebody, I think I just saw somebody said $350 an hour. Jen Lowe, I think, is what it was. So $350 times 50 hours, that's $17,500. That's pretty good. That's probably what he spent. That probably doesn't include his trial fee. I guarantee you this guy probably wanted a $15,000 retainer. His travel expenses from North Carolina. The time starts probably when he leaves his doorstep. He won't probably bill you for sleeping, but all that time sitting in the courtroom waiting to be called, all the time on the witness stand, he earned every penny of that. It's good lawyering. It's very, 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 very good lawyering in this particular case. And, the old joke, justice is expensive. Injustice costs a hell of a lot more. This may be one of those cases where injustice may be buying some reasonable doubt. And hey, Don says here, the super chat, let me see if I can put this one up. Innocent until proven guilty. Even if he's guilty, the state's case is weak. He is guilty of fraud. No doubt about that. I think he would, do that. But, if he can sell off all that's, he sold off Mosul, I think, for 3.9. They sold off Edisto for, I think it was a little over $1 million. It sounds like he may still have the little house in the town that they live that the tree fell on because of a hurricane. So maybe that's still there. I don't know. Maybe they sold that, but I think he's going to do just fine if he's acquitted of this. Will he get some jail time? Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely on his fraud stuff. But guess what? It's a theft case. It's all about the money, ladies and gentlemen. How many times have I said that? It's always about the money. If you have a theft case, what do they want? They want their money. That certainly helps, to make the sting go away. The money plus a little interest. So just something to consider there. We'll have to wait and see. We will definitely have to wait and see. I think maybe I missed it. Does anyone know what the significance of the tire treads on Maggie's leg? I missed that whole thing a few days ago on the broadcast. I may have missed that too. Peace out, Lisa. Well, it was raining at the time. Could it have been muddy and causing him to slip? It could be. Reasonable theory. How do you prove it? Expert didn't say that. He said, no, basically, someone would have to have a firearm at a low level shooting at her. The rounds go through and on their way to the chicken shed or whatever it was, quail shed, dove shed or whatever it was. All I know is they got a lot of guns down there and they're doing a lot of hunting down there. Okay. So there, the lovely Miss Kristen, yet another reason to move to the South. Hunting and fishing. Just something to think about. I mean, the lovely Miss Kristen, for goodness sakes, she has her own fly fishing rod and reel. Okay. There's fly fishing there in the Low Country. Just something to think about. Let's see. $350 an hour seems inexpensive. Maybe because I live in a big city. Defense team is staying in very fancy accommodations, however. As well they should. The defense attorney needs good sleeping accommodations so that they are rested and ready to get up every day. $350 does seem a little inexpensive. Because I think the last engineer that we hired to do a case, and it was for like a personal injury case, but he also testified in our companion criminal case, and his fees were right around $500 to $550 an hour. But he wouldn't get on the plane. I remember because I flew down I flew down to Oklahoma, picked him up, and then we were going to fly to the lab where they were going to do this testing on this firearm. And we're like, hey, how you doing? We talked on the phone. Everything was good to go. And he's like, literally, where's my check? I'm like, okay. I mean, and I get it. That's what he should do that. I'm like, I got it in the plane. Let me go get it. And he's like, okay, now we can go. That's just the way it is. We don't get on cases until the retainer is paid. He wanted his retainer paid. So I get it. So yeah, $350, maybe inexpensive, but that's reasonable. I mean, you don't want to shock the conscience. I think I saw in an aviation case once, the expert charged $1,500 an hour. Now, don't get me wrong. I saw his deposition. He was on our side, thank goodness. He was good. Oh, you have that? Oh, he's like, hold on, I have a disc for you right here. I mean, he was good. He was worth every penny of that. Law. I don't know what this is reference to, but wish I had all the answers to truth on the planet. Me too. It'd make life a lot easier, wouldn't it? Let's see here. Jessica, defense is definitely more prepared, but I do think the evidence trail is strong if you can get through the confusion. I've said this before, and I will say it again. Sometimes it is the defense's job to make the complex very simple, and then to take the very simple and make it very complex. Think about that for a second, ladies and gentlemen. Very simple? Oh, no. It's very complex. Do not let your eyes deceive you. What you see here, ladies and gentlemen, this is very, very complex. And they say, oh, well, you got to do this, and there's all the complexity of it. No, it's real simple. Just like the guy today with his little string. Just like my little guy last week. Here's the door. Here's the bullet hole. Here's his little scale saying at what angle it went in. Here's on the other side of the door, his little string saying where it would have traveled had it not hit multiple bodies. Oops. It's not that simple. Of course, those things get ricocheted and bounce off. Ilana, guilty of fraud is not necessarily guilty of murder. I can't disagree, or I cannot disagree with that statement at all. Like I said, do we think that Alec Murdoch is not a very good guy? He definitely deserved to be disbarred. He lied, cheated, and stole from his clients, his best friends, for goodness sakes. And but did he kill his wife and kid? I mean, that's a pretty bold allegation. So you would think you'd want something pretty darn definitive in it. Like if there was a Snapchat video of him holding the gun seconds before the last video took place, that'd be pretty compelling. Now, his timeline certainly may not be exactly the same. Did he try to intimidate witnesses, his housekeeper, and things like that, whereby, hey, I was really there for 40 minutes, not 20. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more. I hear you're getting married. Those weddings, very, very expensive. I'd love to help you out. Because you remember I was there for 40 minutes that night, don't you? Don't you remember? And now I'm not saying people do that, but let's get real. People do that. Let's see here. Oh, Megan's pretty clear. Guilty. Okay. Okay, but let me tell you this. Clever nickname. I want to be a member. I think you just sign up down below or something. Don't you like that? You become a little member and then you get to sign up, something like that. But all right, but be honest with me here. And then we got to go do our Patreon show. But remember when this case broke? And some people are like, has this not been a great trial? Yes. Has this been a great trial? I'd say yes. You get to see some good lawyering, some mistakes that were made that opened up doors, etc. Patricia Fulton, super chat. Why can't the jury take notes? Local rules, I guess. It varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Some places you don't get to take notes. You have to rely upon your collective memory. And even here, where in Colorado, and I've seen in federal court, jurors are allowed to take notes. But they say, don't let note-taking distract from your listening to the evidence and focusing upon basically the witness demeanor on the stand, their ability to recall, recollect, how well did they perceive what was taking place? Were they high on drugs? Were they at a bad angle? Did they wear glasses? All those types of things. So that's why they do that. It's kind of an old school thing. We talked about it. We've talked about in the past here. Like I said, Colorado is, I think it was, 15 years ago, they're like, we're going to do something radical. We are going to allow the jurors to ask questions. And I was like, I think it's a great idea. Everybody else, oh my gosh, it's the worst thing ever. You're not letting the lawyers try their case. You're not letting them, present the evidence. They're supposed to make their evidence on this. They shouldn't be allowed to ask clarifying questions. Well, is it really a quest for the truth to find out what happened? Yes. Do the jurors become investigators at this point? No, they're not. The questions are supposed to be for clarifying type of questions. Some juries ask no questions. Some jurors ask lots of questions. It just depends. But if their questions get kind of out of line and they start asking for more and more and more, then the judge will usually shut them down. I'm of that mindset. I started out my career as a judge advocate in the Marine Corps, in military trials, tribunals. The jurors were able to ask questions. Those questions still had to conform, just like they do here in Colorado, to the rules of evidence. You can't ask questions that are not legally permissible. So South Carolina is a little behind on some things. Like I said, the sequestration thing is a little unusual to me. But hey, it's a local thing. As an attorney, you got to know the rules. You got to know how to play within those rules and try to use those rules to your advantage. You can't just complain about them. So yeah. Nikki, who else could have killed his wife and son? Well, Nikki, I think the prosecution would say, well, it's obvious it's Alec Murdoch. But I think the defense would say, well, it's obvious it was two guys from size of 5'2" to 5'10". That's their theory. Remember, they just have to raise reasonable doubt. They don't have to prove somebody else did it. But that's their theory. They've been going with it since day one. It was a two-shooter theory. So we'll have to wait and see. Let's see here. Hunting, fishing, and killing. A lot of killing going on down there. That's for sure. Mayhem and murder. That's right. Let's see. But you got to admit, at least they got some good taste in weapons. They got Benelli shotguns. They've got some good stuff down there. Just saying. What about Buster not remembering his father's birthday? At the same time, the defense team was attempting to show what a close family they all were. Yeah, a little weird. And I couldn't make out that, did he just have a brain freeze? Did he just not know? Maybe didn't care. I don't know. I'm not sure a lot of people necessarily know their parents' birthdays off the top of their head. Do kids usually know their parents? They have usually a month or something, right? They kind of get that, but I don't know. Scott, are you a fly fisherman? I knew you were a good guy. No, we try. The lovely Miss Kristen and I, we try to be good fly fishermen. I'll be honest with you. I need a lot more practice. And I do like it when you go with a guide so that you're not out there constantly trying to tie everything up yourself. It's kind of nice to basically say, help me. I just want to do the good stuff. I just want to do the good stuff. But I know. Problem is I got too many things going on. But this year, it's going to be different. Although I just got to get through July. Although I'm finding myself, we can talk about this more in the Patreon show where we're going to go to in just a minute here. For years and years and years and years and years, and I missed lots of things or canceled various things, left vacations early, showed up late, canceled vacations because, well, the court set this date, etc. And I'm kind of at the point where, you know what? Nope, we're going to work around my schedule. And I feel like I'm getting back to that same circumstance where, all right, if I can just make it through the next 5 months, it'll all be okay. I'll be able to get back to some semblance. I mean, I got a lot of stuff to do, right? I signed up for that damn marathon that my exemption has run out on, so I need to be doing that. So far, that isn't exactly going well. I need to be doing more fly fishing. The new CrimeTalk 1 is still not ready to go. That needs to be taken care of. I need to get my type rating. And here we are. And I got trials back to back to back to back. And I would like to buy a good fact for 100, please, because a lot of them don't have a lot of good facts. Please. Anyway, we'll see. BJM. Scott would be a great person to listen to around the campfire. We have little fireside chats. A day in the life. Let me tell you this story once. Yeah. Let's see here. Oh, yeah. Lula wants to know where's his murder clothes? I don't know. It's the prosecution's job to find those murder clothes. There's nothing that says the defense has to do that. In fact, that would go against the constitutional right of the presumption of innocence and not having to prove yourself innocent. Prosecution should say, we know he disposed of them. Instead, you can't. Prosecution has to have answers. The prosecution case cannot have questions to it for proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So if you're going to say, it's the defense that raises doubts by saying, and where's this? And where's this? But prosecution's one that has to produce the evidence in this case. And if you get up there in closing statements as a prosecutor and know that you have questions that you can't, that's going to potentially raise reasonable doubt. I'm just saying. And that is what it comes down to. See, Jody, Alec Murdoch has no moral compass. I cannot necessarily disagree with that. I definitely cannot disagree with that at all. Yeah, he celebrated Alec's birthday in Edisto. That's right, because they played the video of it. That's what opened the door to all the bad stuff. Is they're going to he's a great guy, family celebration, etc., etc. Lula, if he is guilty and he walks, it's on sled. Yeah, if he's not guilty. Oh, yeah, if he's guilty and it walks, yeah. It's always on the prosecution. If the jury comes back not guilty, and I'm not saying they are, I don't know what they're going to do. Closing arguments are going to be very, very interesting. Very, very interesting to see how much time the judge gives them to kind of summarize this and put it all together. And is it going to be enough? But remember, it's always on the prosecution. If the defense wins, that means the prosecution failed to prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. Don't hate the defense, guys. They're doing their job. It means the prosecution failed to do their job. Oh, Nancy, there you go. Start using logic and common sense. Moselle was so remote. It doesn't make sense that somebody just drove up and killed them. How would they know? They would be there at that time. Nancy, there you go, asking those questions of common sense and reasonableness. Exactly. Because remember, you kind of turn into Moselle and then you kind of got to drive down a little road and then stuff's there. Yeah, it would almost be so random. It would be like almost maybe somebody planned them to get them there and knew that they were going to be there, and then somebody else pulled the trigger, not Alec Murdoch. I agree with you, Nancy. It's a little odd. Whether he lured Paul and Maggie to the house. Remember, she was up at Edisto, redesigning Edisto, had workers there. The house was basically open. She wanted to stay there. Good question. I mean, that's a reasonable question. But guess what? That's upon the prosecution to prove that. Defense can say, hey, must have been those two other guys, 5'2" to 5'10". Old Alec Murdoch, 6'4". Can't be him. Okay, Scott. The expert witness today worked on the boat accident investigation. Is that not a conflict of interest in this case? I don't see that as a conflict of interest. What I think is probably a bigger conflict of interest is the fact that Mr. Griffin was Paul Murdoch's attorney on the boat case. I would think that would be a conflict. We talked about the case that I didn't have it, but somebody I knew, where he was retained on a case to represent a guy who had, large possessions of, large possession of amounts of a Schedule II controlled substance. We'll just leave it at that. Let's just say somebody didn't like that, and or maybe didn't pay for it. I think it got seized, and he couldn't pay the money back. And then he wound up basically in a car in a flaming, hot, molten pile of metal. The guy that was accused of that, his good friend, and they had cell phone records literally tracking his phone up to where the car may have allegedly been set on fire, and then tracking him back all the way home. And then they retained the guy that represented the dead guy on the controlled substance case. Found out years and years later that was a conflict of interest. So if in this particular situation, Alec Murdoch were to be convicted and his appeals not to be successful, what would be one of the allegations for a post-conviction relief, in my humble opinion? Well, there was a conflict of interest. He liked Paul better than he liked me, and he did not want me to go down, and it was a conflict. He should have done it, and that's the way it is. Lovely Miss Kristen. Always keeping me humble. Maybe the guns and clothes were hidden in his dad's grave. Ooh, I like that theory. I mean, you just never know. You just never know. I don't think we're going to see. I mean, that's really the next question here is who here thinks that Alec Murdoch is going to testify or not? I don't know. Yeah. Oh, Jessica, I am not a Patreon. Well, Jessica, there should be a link down below. Just simply go there, become a Patreon member, and then you get access. Because, well, look, we've got our hour that we do for our Tuesday night live show. Now we're going to continue the conversation over on our Patreon site. So if you're not a Patreon, now would be a good time to do so. And you can get in there for little to no money. And guess what? You get to call in as well, and we can continue this conversation. We'll talk about whatever you want because it's your Patreon. It's your show. We'll talk about what you want to know. Hopefully we can ask it to you. Scott, can the case of Murdoch represented be appealed based upon him having that significant of opioid addiction? Probably only if he lost the cases. I guess, I mean, I'm sure there's somebody said, oh, I could have got, he's a PI attorney. I could have got more money if my attorney wasn't high on opioids. Yes. Beach Girl. Scott, does his murder charge specifically mean he's charged pulling the trigger, or can it include that he was a participant in a plan but actually didn't kill them? That would be a conspiracy, or they would have to say there was a complicity. But the prosecution's theory has been, and they haven't really swayed from it at all, is that Alec Murdoch was the trigger man. That's what they are alleging. That's their theory of prosecution. So, yeah, that's why I'm saying. Karen Bradshaw. The fact they're saying Alec was too tall to be the shooter reminds me of the OJ case. The gloves didn't fit. Everyone knows the leather shrinks when it gets wet. Yep, everybody knew that, except the prosecutors. Just saying. The prosecution needs to put on a 6'4" subject in a golf cart and let him drive into the courtroom, measure his height, and at that angle, Alex drove a quiet golf cart down to the kennels. Can't. I don't think they're going to be able to do that, but certainly something they're going to have to explain away. I mean, whether you like it or not, the defense, I think, scored a little bit of points today. Yeah, you got to get through a little bit of the rambling, a little bit of this and that. But what does it really mean? Hey, science doesn't lie. You got to believe the science, ladies and gentlemen, right? Or they always say, believe the science. The guy's a mechanical engineer. He's a physicist. There you go. I don't know. I think he scored some points. Is it enough to raise reasonable doubt? I don't know. Gold cart. The golf cart top speed would not fit the timeline. Have to wait and see. Yeah. Prosecution should have played Paul's video from the kennels from Buster and asked him if that was his dad's voice. George Peach, I totally thought that they would do that. Hey, Buster, while we got you up here on the witness stand, let me just play exhibit whatever. And and, play it and be like, hey, is that your dad's voice? Yeah. Remember they asked him, was it I did him so bad or they did him so bad? He clearly knew the answer to that one. I'd be curious if they knew that if he was prepped. And George Peach, it just cracks me up. I used to have a neighbor when I lived in South Carolina. We lived on base housing, and there was a guy across the street, he and his wife, and they had kids. And she would just sit there and say, I'm just a George Peach. Just saw that name there. I thought, that's funny. Let's see. Kathy, the timeline started after the Buster phone recording. I agree. Why didn't they do that? I don't know. Do not know. Hey, Ruth, sorry, it went by so fast. The statement, they did him so bad. Why wouldn't this person say that? I think we were just saying they did that. I was driving by a golf cart. Chicken did it. My families don't turn on each other. There you go. All right. There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. There you have it. Our Tuesday Night Live made it up from last week. Sorry, I missed last week. But now if you want to continue the conversation, we're going to jump over to our Patreon show. So we'll see you there in, I don't know, 5 minutes or so. Scott, yes, their witnesses were well prepped. Yes, they were. Totally, sir. Totally. All right. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you all at Patreon in just a few minutes.